This is Metatherapy, where we talk about therapy itself, not advice, not diagnosis, just understanding the process so you can use it better. Each episode of Metatherapy is psychoeducation, not therapy. If something resonates, it's meant to be language you can bring back into your own work. Quick question. When was the last time you were bored? Not stuck, not unmotivated, not procrastinating, just bored. The kind of bored where you stare at the ceiling and your mind drifts and you absolutely have no plan for what comes next. If you can't remember, and a lot of us genuinely can't, that's not a personality thing. That's a measurable cultural shift. And what's behind it isn't what you'd think. People assume that social media exists to cure boredom. The research over the last 2 years says the exact opposite. The platforms don't relieve boredom. They actually manufacture more of it. I'm Dominic Gadori, and this is Metatherapy. And today I want to walk you through what I think is one of the most important findings to come out of digital mental health research in the last 24 months. And it's called the boredom paradox. Here's the short version. Short form video, TikTok, Reels, Shorts, the whole architecture of swipe and scroll is sold to us as a cure for boredom. The research says it's actually the cause. The more you use it to escape boredom, the more bored you become, not just on the platform, but off it in your life. Today, we're going to do 3 things. First, I'm going to walk you through the 3 mechanisms behind this, because once you see them, you can't unsee them. Second, I'm going to talk about what it is doing clinically, because I'm seeing it in my office every week now. And third, I'm going to give you an honest, evidence-based framework for what to do about it. Not a digital detox, not delete your apps, something even more useful than that. So let's get to it. Before we get into the mechanisms, I want to set the table because boredom is one of the most poorly understood states in psychology. And until recently, most of what we said about social media and boredom were just really guesswork. That has changed. 2 pieces of research dropped in the last 15 months that I think are genuinely paradigm shifting. Study 1, Tam and Inslicht, published by the American Psychological Association in the Journal of Experimental Psychology. 7 experiments, 1,223 participants. 6 of the 7 pre-registered. And that study is called Fast Forward to Boredom: How Switching Behavior on Digital Media Makes People More Bored. And this is a serious paper. Pre-registered means the researchers committed to their hypothesis before they ran the experiments. You can't fish for a positive result. And what they found was a bidirectional causal relationship between boredom and digital switching. When people were bored, they switched videos, apps, content. They believed that switching would help. It didn't. Switching between videos and even fast forwarding within a single video led to more boredom, less satisfaction, less attention, less meaning. In the second study, Nguyen and colleagues at Griffith University, a systematic review and meta-analysis of 71 studies, and now we're talking 98,299 participants. And this was published in the Psychological Bulletin in late 2025, often referred in the press as the Feeds, Feeling, and Focus paper. This one looked at the broader mental health and cognitive picture. Higher short-form video use was associated with worse attention, worse inhibitory control, worse working memory, and elevated anxiety, stress, and depression. And the average person under 30 in the study was clocking 6.5 hours of online time per day. Now, most of these studies are cross sectional, they capture a snapshot, not a causation over time. So the meta analysis can't tell us whether short form video causes anxiety or whether anxious people use more short form video. Both are probably true. The TAM and Inzlik experiments, though, do show causation in the boredom direction, and that's the strongest evidence we have. Here's the thing that most people miss in coverage of this research. Boredom isn't just, I have nothing to do. That's not what the boredom research means. Boredom is what happens when there's a gap between the engagement you want and the engagement you're actually getting. It's a signal, your brain telling you, this isn't meaningful enough. This isn't challenging enough. Find something better. Boredom is information. And what these platforms do, and this is the framing I want you to hold on to for the rest of this episode, is they jam the signal. They give you just enough stimulation to suppress the boredom signal without giving you anything that would actually resolve it. It's the psychological equivalent of taking a painkiller for a broken bone. The pain goes away, the fracture doesn't. Okay, 3 mechanisms. Let's go. So the first mechanism we're going to talk about is switching itself is the problem. And this is the headline finding from the Tam and Inzlik experiments. It is so counterintuitive that I want to walk through how they tested it because the design matters. They sat participants down with video content. One group could swipe, fast forward, switch between clips, a full short form behavior. The other group had to watch the same content straight through, no switching. They then measured boredom. The group that could switch was more bored, not less. Across multiple experiments, the ability to switch between or within videos consistently produced higher boredom, lower satisfaction, and lower perceived meaning, even when participants chose their own content on YouTube. Even when they got to pick what they wanted to watch, videos they were genuinely interested in, switching made the experience less enjoyable, not more. So, why does this happen? Well, 2 things. The first thing is called immersion. Enjoyment in the deeper sense requires you to actually settle into something, to stop evaluating it. Short form architecture is anti immersion by design. Every second, the platform is asking you a question. Is this one good enough? Better than what's next? Worth your attention? You are constantly meta-evaluating instead of experiencing. And meta-evaluation is exhausting. The second is what the researchers call the opportunity cost effect. When you can switch, every video has to compete with every other video that could be next. The current one rarely wins, so you swipe. And then the next one has to compete with the one after that, and so on. You're never actually inside the content. You're always one swipe away from somewhere else. So that's mechanism 1. The behavior we use to escape boredom, switching, is the behavior that produces it. The platforms are designed to make switching frictionless. Default infinite scroll, autoplay on, tap to skip. Every UI choice is pulling you toward the behavior that makes you more bored. You're not weak for falling into it. You're a person interacting with a system optimized to do exactly that. Mechanism number 2, and this one is about short form and what it's doing to your baseline. There's a concept in affective science called hedonic adaptation. The basic idea is repeated exposure to a pleasurable stimulus reduces your sensitivity to it over time. The first bite of dessert is great. The 10th bite is fine. The 20th bite, you've stopped tasting it. Now apply that to a feed. From the MedRx IV systematic review on short form video in 2025, repeated exposure to highly stimulating, fast paced content may lead to habituation, wherein users become desensitized to slower, more cognitively demanding tasks such as reading, problem solving, or deep learning. That's the engagement threshold shift. The 2024 review on rising boredom in the digital age, published in a Natural Group journal, put it like this: digital media doesn't just fail to relieve boredom, it actually raises the levels of stimulation you need before something feels engaging at all. In practical terms, if your baseline is 40 TikToks in 20 minutes, high arousal, high novelty, algorithmically optimized, then a book chapter, a long conversation, a slow walk, a piece of difficult work, all of those things now register as boring. Not because they are, but because your threshold has moved. And this is where I think the clinical conversation has been incomplete. We've been asking, is screen time bad for you? And maybe that's the wrong question. The better question is, what is regular short form use doing to your capacity to enjoy things that aren't short form? Because that is the actual mechanism of harm. It's not that the videos themselves are evil. I mean, you're watching one right now. It's that prolonged use rewires your sense of what interesting feels like. And most of life, including most of the things that produce real meaning, isn't optimized to feel that interesting. Short form video is to attention what processed sugar is to taste buds. It's not that the sugar is poison, it's that all you eat is hyper engineered sugar. Real food, like fruit, vegetables, slow cooked meals, starts to taste like nothing. The food didn't change, you did. So that's mechanism number two. Short form doesn't just bore you in the moment, it moves your floor. So now moving into the third mechanism. And this is the one I think gets the least attention in the popular conversation, and it's arguably the most important. There's a network in your brain called the default mode network, or DNM for short. It's not a region, it's a system distributed across several areas that turns on when you're not actively focused on a task, when you're staring out a window, when you're walking without headphones, when you're in the shower and your mind drifts, when you're, yes, bored. The default mode network is where some of the most important psychological work in your life happens: self reflection, mind wandering, memory consolidation, thinking about your future, thinking about your relationships, the integration of who you are, creative incubation, that thing where the answer to a problem shows up in the shower because your conscious mind finally stopped pounding on it. That's the DNM at work. So, neuroimaging research has shown that the DNM activates during rest, mind wandering, and unstructured time. It is associated with divergent thinking, autobiographical memory, future planning, and self referential thought. A 2024 intracranial study in Brain showed disrupting DMN activity directly reduces creative originality. And here's the problem: the DMN doesn't run when you're scrolling. Scrolling is constant external input. Your attention is being yanked outward, microsecond to microsecond. The DMN can't get a word in. And modern phone use means most adults never have a stretch of empty attention long enough for the DMN to do its work. This is where I want to be careful. I'm not saying boredom is magic. Boredom is uncomfortable. It's supposed to be uncomfortable. That's how it functions as a signal. The point is not to suffer for its own sake. The point is that the discomfort of boredom is the doorway to a particular kind of mental state where some of the most important psychological function happens. and where we are paving over the doorway. I want to read you something. The 2014 Sandy Mann study, small but well cited. Participants did a deliberately boring task, copying numbers from a phone book. When they were given a divergent thinking task, list as many uses as possible for a pair of plastic cups, the board group generated significantly more creative uses than the control group. Boredom didn't dull their thinking, it primed it. That is a finding most parents intuited about their kids before they had screens to hand to them. The kid who's bored on a Sunday afternoon eventually invents a game. The kid who's handed a tablet does not. The capacity to generate from within atrophies if it's never used. And this, to bring it back to the clinical lens, this is one reason I think we're seeing what we're seeing in offices like mine. People in their 20s and 30s presenting with what looks like depression, but functions more like meaning starvation. They're not unwell in any classical sense. They have just long enough running access to the internal mental state where meaning is generated. The default mode network has been getting no air. And so that's mechanism number 3, the space where you become yourself in the space that the platforms are most efficient at eating. Okay, 3 mechanisms: the switching trap, the threshold shift, the default mode network gets no air. So, what do we do? I want to be honest with you about this. The advice you usually hear is delete the app, do a digital detox, and or lock your phone in a box. But that does not work for most people. And the research on digital detox interventions is genuinely mixed. Going cold turkey on a tool you also use for work, for connection, for navigation, and for occasional joy is not realistic. It's also not the goal. Here's what the evidence actually points to: 3 changes in order of importance. If you do nothing else, do this. Pick one daily window where boredom is allowed to exist, not minimized, allowed. This can be 10 minutes, the walk to the mailbox, the shower, the wait for coffee to brew, any window where you currently reach for your phone. Don't reach. Let the boredom show up. Let it be uncomfortable. That discomfort is your DMN coming online. That is the sound of your own internal life, which has been getting drowned out, finding the volume knob again. Most adults under 40 have lost the muscle for tolerating unstructured attention. It does come back, and faster than you'd think, usually within 2 to 3 weeks. If you can do more, when you do use short form video, use it with intentionality and finish what you start. This is the direct application of the Tam and Inslick finding. Switching is the harm. So open the app with a stop time in mind. Watch full videos through. Resist the swipe mid-clip impulse. The research literally shows that if you can't switch, you enjoy the same content even more. You don't have to quit. You just have to stop fragmenting. And if you want to go all the way, reintroduce one long-form, slow engagement activity into your week and protect it. A book, a long walk without earbuds, a real conversation that isn't being interrupted by glances at a screen, cooking something complicated, anything that asks you to stay inside a single experience for 30 minutes or more. This is how you rebuild the engagement threshold downward toward where actual life is. The threshold that has drifted up is not stuck up there. It moves with use. 3 changes in order. The first one is non-negotiable. The other 2 scale to your life and your capacity. So here's what I would like for you to take away. The story we've been told about social media and boredom is backward. We were told the platforms exist because we are bored and that it cures it. The research now says that the platforms produce more of the boredom they claim to relieve, and the people who use them most are the most bored of all. That is not a moral failing, it's a mechanism. Three of them, actually. And the way out of it is not punishment. It's not a vow of digital chastity. It's something quieter and harder. It's learning again to sit inside an unstimulated moment without flinching. That's a skill. That skill has atrophied for most of us. It can come back. And when it does, things start to come back with it: meaning, creativity, the ability to want something that wasn't suggested to you by an algorithm. That's the whole episode. Three mechanisms, one framework. The discomfort of boredom is not your enemy. It is, when you let it speak, one of the most useful signals your mind produces. If this episode landed for you, the most useful thing you can do is share it with one person you know who's been describing themselves as foggy or flat or low grade burned out. They probably aren't sick. They might be starved of something the algorithm has been efficiently feeding them less and less of. Subscribe if you haven't. Comment with what you're going to try this week: the 10-minute window, the no switching rule, or the long form reintroduction. I read those comments and I tend to follow up, and I tend to do follow up episodes based on what comes up most. My name is Dominic Adori, and this has been Metatherapy. I'll see you again soon.